Using poems and other non-biblical readings in worship can lead to a bit of a treasure hunt. I often don't have a specific work in mind, just a theme, and that is usually based on the epistle choice in the lectionary. This week, I stumbled upon a hidden gem in the name. I admit I'd never heard of Thomas Tranströmer before, but I wish I had. I find his poems relatable, yet profound, as he evokes mystery in the mundane. I may not have slept in my car by the side of the road, but I relate to the feeling of disorientation when woken suddenly, unsure not just of where I am, but of who I am. It's a common enough experience, but it cuts to the existential. Who among us hasn't asked at one time or another, who am I? This can be difficult to answer. In this culture, identity is often attached to work. You meet someone and one of the first questions asked is, what do you do? Knowing full well they aren't asking about recreation, community engagement, or spirituality. If that was the case, they'd add, for fun, in your spare time, or as a prayer practice. Wouldn't that last one be an interesting conversation? Apart from work, the person is sizing you up. Sizing up your salary and your social status. There's potential for judgment, even of ourselves when we respond with a just in front of what we do. I'm just a factory worker. I'm just a stay-at-home parent. I'm just a cashier. I'm so glad these past months have helped us appreciate the work of so many, but I wonder how long it will be before we start judging each other again. Not unlike Nathaniel's, can anything good come from Nazareth? The gospel story reminds us that not every culture is focused on what do you do. Besides learning where Jesus is from, we are told who his father is, which reminds me of Anishinaabe introductions. People will say their name, their clan, then where they are from, and if they live somewhere other than on their home reserve, they often will name both places. This gets us a bit closer to the question of, who am I? Much closer than simply, what do I do? It strikes me that for the most part, women have a better grasp on this than men do, often naming relationships as well as work. Now, this can be problematic when one becomes defined only by your relationships. So-and-so's wife, so-and-so's mother, so-and-so's daughter. And we used to enshrine this culturally when after marriage, a woman became Mrs. John Smith, no longer Maisie. And this was compounded with a social pressure to take one's spouse's surname. Fortunately, all of this has opened up over the last few decades, and naming has many different options. But all of these issues aside, I am reminded in this of how much I know myself through my relationships. Now, of course, we need to look more deeply than this, and I find the gospel is really helpful here. Jesus meets Simon and looks past his given name, looks past his paternal connection, and names him Cephas. He sees him as he is. Similarly, he's able to see Nathanael's true self and recognize him as one who is without deceit or guile. Jesus seems to appreciate these people for who they are. And it is from this awareness of who they are that they have a sense of call. We often associate call with ministry, but whether we are sharing our gifts in a community of faith or in the wider world, we're all called to share from who we are and to make a difference in the world. And so, as an artist or teacher, engineer, stay-at-home parent, factory worker, supply chain manager, dairy farmer, ideally, we made our choice of what we were going to do based on our interests as well as our aptitudes. Now, we know, well, this isn't always the case. Sometimes we just can't do what aligns with our interests. And we also know of people who, well, they do what they're skilled at, but it doesn't align with their passion. Because what they really want to do doesn't pay well, or will be seen as successful or prestigious either by themselves or perhaps by their family. And so they end up feeling unfulfilled and regrettably may not use their gifts in service of others. And so we end up perpetuating the narrative of our culture, which places the highest value on economic growth and upward mobility. And we end up furthering inequality and injustice. We end up harming the environment as well. And in the end, it can all become quite compulsive as we make choices from outside ourselves rather than as God sees us. I begin to see myself through the lens of the culture and what the culture values. If busy is important, I work all hours. If having money is key, I need a high-paying job. If I want to be popular, I worry about how many likes I get, how many friends I have. And we end up living our lives motivated by fear and worry. And yet, didn't we learn last week that we are all the beloved of God, that is our foundational identity? Being the beloved of God is our true self. That's what defines us, not the world. And this is the deeper meaning of Jesus renaming Simon as Cephas. Cephas wasn't just a nickname. Jesus was cutting through socially constructed identities to point to Simon's deepest nature in relation to God. Rock, stone, is a symbol of divine presence across multiple cultures, including first century Judaism. Similarly, the fig tree was believed to be the tree that stood at the center of the Garden of Eden. So for Nathanael to be sitting underneath the fig tree meant that he was close to God. Both the renaming of Simon and Jesus' description of Nathanael speak to their true identity in and through God. And that is our foundational relationship. Not something exclusive to just Simon and Nathaniel, but all of us, expressions of God. And that awareness changes how we see ourselves, how we see each other, and what we value in life. Brian McLaren names this really well in Everything Must Change, Jesus, Global Crises, and a Revolution of Hope. If we root our identity in and through God, and so recognize that all of us are beloved, we make different choices in how we live. Prayer is transformed. No longer a series of requests to make it in this world, but a desire to be transformed in the heart so we can in turn become catalysts of change. We work differently. We realize that taking Sabbath is more than a time of renewal. It reframes how we see each other and the world, not as commodities, but as companions. We recognize that our primary work is as builders of a new world. And we shop differently as well. This is to quote Brian McLaren. When faced with a choice between an inexpensive pair of pants produced by a corporation that exploits workers, we will choose a more expensive pair produced by one that treats its workers fairly. Maybe we'll own fewer pairs of pants, but we'll feel better wearing them. When we see ourselves, each other, our fellow creatures and shared environment through who we are in and through God, we will vote, drive, invest, eat, treat our neighbors differently, and I would say, treat our enemies differently as well. We will live differently. Thomas Tranströmer would say it this way, I think. When we come to know who we are in and through God, and so who we are with and for one another, it's as if an angel has announced our name. And in that moment, we feel that our life has been given back to us. May we all live that